At this time, we'd like to introduce the speakers to you. First up is Ellie Kohanim. Ellie serves as the Deputy Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. As Deputy Special Envoy, she helps inform and carry out policies and related initiatives that aim to encounter global anti-Semitism. She has an extensive background fighting anti-Semitism and promoting religious equity based on her decades of advocacy, policy development, and journalism and public speaking work. Ms. Kohanim arrived as a child refugee to the U.S. after she and her family fled the escalating anti-Semitism in Iraq during the 1979 Islamic Revolution.
Our next speaker is Leora Rez. Leora is the Executive Director of Stop Anti-Semitism. Leora started her Jewish Chick Instagram account in 2012 to showcase her two greatest, fashion and Judaism. In just a few short years, the Jewish Chick brand became one of the leading Jewish names on social media. In 2018, Leora wanted to expand her love for activism and helped co-found StopAntisemitism.org, a watchdog group dedicated to exposing anti-Semitism. StopAntisemitism.org reaches millions of people monthly, and with the help of their dedicated audience and partners, is now often the go-to organization for reporting and exposing anti-Semites.
Our third speaker is Ilan Sinlikov. Ilan is the president and founder of Students Supporting Israel, SSI, a pro-Israel student movement with 50 chapters across universities in North America. Immigrating from Israel before college, during his freshman year, Ilan registered the first SSI group at the University of Minnesota. In 2014, the second SSI chapter was established, beginning the growth of an organization to create national, united pro-Israel grassroots students movement. For over 8 years now, Ilan is leading face-to-face grassroots advocacy campaigns and social media efforts on college campuses in the United States and Canada.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to all of our speakers for joining us this evening. Now we would like to give our speakers the opportunity to provide opening remarks. We ask that they try and keep their opening remarks to under 90 seconds so we can jump into the Q&A. We certainly understand if you run over 90 seconds. First up is Ellie. Ellie, it's an honor to give you the floor.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to take my 90 seconds to say, first of all, Tisku Mitzkot or Yasher Koach, however you like to say it, to Hashevet, which is doing incredible work in the combating anti-Semitism space, also Baltimore Zionist District, and really everyone who's taking a Sunday evening time to be part of this conversation. Thank you all for joining us.
Ilan?
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you listening to us today. So I am the founder of Students Supporting Israel, located out of Minnesota. I know not a place that everyone expects a pro-Israel movement to be established. Students Supporting Israel was started in 2012, and we had a vision in front of us, create a student movement that's going to be just like we have college Republicans and college Democrats on campus, just like we have an organization called Students for Justice in Palestine that promotes BDS on almost any campus in the United States, to have a pro-Israel student movement run by the students, led by the students, that are going to counter all those narratives that are going on our college campuses. And we had mainly three things in mind in how we're going to do it. The first one, stop apologizing and being Zionist, being proud Zionist. The second one, try to not preach to the choir and grow our voices outside the tent. And until today, SSI is about 35% of our students are non-Jewish students. And most important, it's to be visible on campus. If we want to change the reality on the ground, we need to be seen. As we got going, we grew, and now we operate in the United States, in Canada, and we just opened 10 chapters in Argentina as of last month for the upcoming school year. So also, we're going to have operations in South America.
That's great. Ilan, thank you very much. Leora.
Mirroring what Ellie and Ilan said, thank you guys so much for including us in StopAntisemitism.org. I had the pleasure of co-founding our organization in 2018 after working in social media for about 6 years. And I really wanted to take the platform that I had built up with my Jewish Chick brand and kind of make more of a real life impact, fight the anti-Semitism and expose it, and try to help navigate and stop it with everything we're seeing on social media, where this kind of anti-Semitism is really taking on a new life and erupting. And which we're all aware of, and we can chat about it later. But thank you again for having us.
Of course. And thank you, the three of you, for being here and for your opening remarks. Your passion and for the work that you do is evident every single day for everything that you do. We want to jump into a few questions, and we would like each of our speakers to address the questions that we have. The first question is for Ellie, though, and we think that you can address this question, and only you. Can you please take us through the typical day at the State Department in your role in combating anti-Semitism in America and around the world?
Great. So, Karen, what I wanted to share with everyone is that I'm in the Office to Monitor and Combat Anti-Semitism at the State Department, which was created by a bipartisan act of Congress in 2004 under President George W. Bush. And in every previous administration, this office was manned by a special envoy and maybe one kind of administrative staff member. To the credit of President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, for the first time in this administration, this office has been expanded to include our special envoy Ilan Carr and myself and two others who are kind of deputy level envoys and assistant envoys. And so what that's allowed us to do, having this increased manpower, is really take the global fight against anti-Semitism to a regional perspective, so that I am handling the Middle East, North Africa, and Latin America region. And so what that means is that I focus in a typical day on what we have determined are the three sources of anti-Semitism in the world today, which is the far-right white supremacist camp, the far-left anti-Zionist camp, which I know we want to spend some time talking about tonight, as well as the radical Islamists. And I would tell you that all three of those threats are serious. They are coming at the Jewish people at the same time in certain countries from all three sources at the same time. The Jewish people are finding themselves the victims of anti-Semitism from all three sources. So we don't rank those sources of anti-Semitism. We just know that we're fighting all of them. And so my particular focus, again, is Middle East, North Africa, and Latin America. And I would tell you that in the Middle East, the challenge that we have is that anti-Semitism is institutionalized in the Middle East, so that it is taught in schools. It's part and parcel of the curricula. Unfortunately, you'll find it in mosques as well as in the media in the Middle East. And so that is the fight that we have in that region. In Latin America, and I was so pleased to hear Ilan say that they're launching groups out of Argentina, and I hope he'll talk about that a little bit more. Latin America presents a different kind of challenge to us in that every country is a bit different. In a country like Chile, there is a huge 400 to 500,000 Palestinian expat community. And so there's a lot of BDS agitation and legislation that is under consideration right now, which the United States has clearly and vocally opposed as being against our policy, certainly, to single out the Jewish state of Israel in any way. And so every country in Latin America, I would tell you, is different. But those threat sources are all the same. It's the far right, the far left, and radical Islam. And I would tell you it's the same in Europe as well. Just to speak on Europe for one moment, what we're finding in Europe is that obviously only 75 years after the crematoria have cooled down, the Europeans are still they're still battling the white supremacist camp that exists in Europe that kind of never went away. But unfortunately, we're also finding in Europe that with the migration of people from the Middle East comes the migration of anti-Semitic attitudes. And so in Europe, that is a continent where, like I said, the Jews are kind of facing attacks from every direction. That's kind of a day in the life is looking at the globe and where anti-Semitism is emanating and how we're going to be combating it.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you very much for that. Our first question that we want to open up to all of our speakers, and we're going to try and go by a format of after the question, we'll hand it off to someone and then name what the order is, just to make sure we're flowing well. But the first question we have here is for Leora. We'll start with Leora, then go to Ilan and Ellie. How do you define Zionism? And could you tell the audience how has Zionism impacted your life?
Sure. So for me, I operate in very simple terms and language. Zionism for me is just a home for Jews. and the ability and right for Jews to have a safe and autonomous nation. Some people like to delve into it being a political ideology. Some people like, philosophical ideology. For me, it's just a home for a Jewish nation, home for all Jews in the diaspora, and for us to have the right to defend our home. It sounds like our other two speakers, I'm a refugee from another nation. I'm from the Soviet Union. We had immigrated here when I was around 4 years old. And my parents, it actually took us a few years to be able to get out, where we were fleeing the horrors of communism and socialism and all of the anti-Semitism that comes along with it. And the only reason why we decided to immigrate to America versus Israel was because my father didn't want his daughter, that being me, having to serve in the military. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, my father, they all had to serve in the Soviet army. And with his experiences, he wanted just a more simple life for his children. So, which is why we immigrated, thank goodness, to America. So we grew up in a very typical, ex-Soviet home, and where religion really was downplayed. However, we grew up with the notion that Israel is the insurance policy for Jews around the world. And we fled a nation where even if we wanted to, we weren't able to practice Judaism. And there were quotas for how many Jews were allowed. For instance, my father was a high-level engineer. There were quotas in, certain universities he wasn't allowed to study at because there were too many Jews. I grew up with horror stories about anti-Semitism, how I'm personally from Lithuania, how the little birds, I forget what they're called, swallows, they would refer to them as Jews because we would nibble off of, garbage on the floor. So again, growing up with horror stories about anti-Semitism and basically the existence of Israel is essentially our insurance policy, and having the pleasure of, visiting. And really, to me, Israel it's very much like another state in America. I like to call it the Miami of the Middle East. It's honestly baffling to me how there are so many Jews, unfortunately, that are not, whether they didn't get the education at home or in day school or just completely weren't tied to their heritage, how they're not understanding that, especially with everything going on in 2020 in America, the importance of Israel.
Leora, thank you. Elon, we'll go to you next. And again, the question is, how do you define Zionism, and how has Zionism impacted your life?
So Zionism is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people. It's a very simple sentence to define it. And the interesting part is that over the years that I've been working on different college campuses, students today don't know how to define it. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. Not only we have a lot of Jewish students or students who do like Israel not knowing necessarily how to define Zionism, we also have the opponent side attacking us, finding what Zionism is for us. So that's kind of the problems and the issues that we're facing. Now, for me, Zionism, it's a big part of my life. It's my life, actually. I was born and raised in Israel. I was the first generation in my family to be born in Israel, the first Sabra. And in Israel, that's the place where I learned how to speak my first language, learned how to read, learned how to write, and made my friends, and grew up basically until I moved here to the United States. Now, every single day when I wake up and before I go to sleep, I deal with college students in Israel work on campuses. So Zionism is actually taking the entire day from me, and it's a way of life, I would argue. And I want to say on this call that, many of the people here are Zionists. Of course, the host of the meeting is the Baltimore Zionist Organization. So I'm very happy to be here. But we need to make sure that more and more students, especially the younger generation, let it be in colleges, let it be in high schools, and even before, know what is Zionism. Because we get to the point in which a lot of people have no issues with any other national movements, and they support other national movements around the world. But when it comes down to the national movement of the Jewish people, that's when people start having an issue. And this is something that we try to combat, and we're facing every day on campus. And this is something that we'll slowly trying to change over and switch that conversation.
So when it comes to the question of Zionism, I think it's really important to understand that our administration we have a policy that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, full stop. So that there are many people who are hiding under the guise of, we have no problem with the Jews or the Jewish people. It's just the Zionist entity that we take issue with, and so on. And so, again, President Trump and this administration has said over and again that the policy of this administration is that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And, what that brings me to is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, which under it has examples when speech or action crosses the line into anti-Semitism. And so I just want to read to everyone one of the examples that the IRA definition uses as an example of when something has become anti-Semitic is, quote, denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination, for example, by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. And so I recommend everyone take a look at the IRA definition. It's one of our priorities in the State Department that we speak with all of our foreign counterparts. We ask every country to adopt the IRA definition. And some good news in the fight against anti-Semitism is that there are countries every day, including Argentina most recently, who are adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. And so they too are understanding that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And just a final note on that in terms of our administration, this past December 2019, President Trump passed an executive order combating anti-Semitism. And within that executive order, we adopted the IRA definition of anti-Semitism for all executive agencies. So while the State Department had adopted the IRA definition back in 2010, the President's executive order now has adopted the IRA definition for all executive agencies. So now, I think I'm very proud to say that because of President Trump's leadership, our government has now adopted it across the board in our agencies. And so when we are trying to figure out when something is anti-Semitic or not, we look to this IRA definition, which again, very prominently addresses the issues of anti-Zionism.
So the question that we had, and this is important because we talk a lot about this at work, me and Adi, we see a lot of college students right now, pro-Israel college students that are under attack in their on campuses. Elon, this question will go to you first. Can you please share the effects that anti-Zionist organizations such as If Not Now, JVP, BDS supporters have had on Jewish students in recent years and how that's affecting them on a day-to-day basis? So I'm going to start with you, Elon, because I feel like this is something that you deal with on a daily basis, and then go to Leora and then back to Ellie.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, right now we're dealing with it all the time. It doesn't matter if it's summer break, or it doesn't matter if it's the school is on, let it be remote or let it be in the classroom. So a lot of anti-Zionist organizations are out there. You named a few, of course, there are a few more. But what we've been seeing, and that's actually the reason to why Students Supporting Israel started, it was that we've seen all of those anti-Zionist organizations that their entire focus is to talk badly about Israel. And we did not see the other side. There was no other side on campus that would step up and would be proud in our Zionism. And I want to give you an example of if I'm a student and I'm working, let's say, at the University of Iowa, and the entire thing that I hear day and day, it's how Israel is bad and that Israel is a bad place and that Zionism is racism and so on. So of course, if I'm going to hear that and I'm not going to hear anything as an opposition to it, I'm going to fall into it. Because if I don't know what exactly goes on in the Middle East, I haven't done my research, and all I hear is that propaganda, I'm going to slowly start to believe in it. Now, we started as a site to have another side of the story, to show that if, you know what, you might hear all of those claims, but come speak to the Students Supporting Israel organization and to our representatives, our students on campus. And we slowly started seeing a change, because we cannot get to a situation in which Jewish students or even Zionist students are quiet of their Zionism, or feel uncomfortable to speak about their pride and support to Israel, because almost being anti-Zionist, it's almost fashionable nowadays. So what we started in SSI is the following, to make it very specific. First of all, we need to be out there. We need to be seen. Let it be in the cafeteria, let it be in the library, let it be in the student union. We need to be seen with the Israeli flags, because it's not enough that we have an Israeli flag hanging out in our dorm room. We need to take that flag outside. and we need to start talking to people. We need to start those conversations with as many students as possible about Israel, about Zionism, and reach as many students that we can. And it doesn't matter if those students are Jewish or not, because we need to remember that at the end of the day, the majority of the students on college campuses are non-Jewish. We actually read some statistics, and we know that there are more college students in the United States than Jewish people in the entire world. Okay, and this is a fascinating fact. So it's our job to reach as many people as we can by showing them our pride and support to Israel. And of course, our students, sometimes when they go to the campus grounds, they don't need to be the experts and know every single thing, but trying time after time and being there and engaging in the conversation will give them the experience that they need in order to be a proud representative of the state of Israel. Let it be if they make a mistake sometime, or let it be if they come out with their face and head up high. And I always tell to our students that the worst thing that you can possibly have or do is to walk away from a conversation and have that feeling of, how come I didn't say anything? How come someone spoke badly about Israel, about my home, about my friends who live there, and I was quiet and I didn't speak up? We want our students in SSI or any other students to always walk away from the conversation knowing that we stood our ground when it came down to our country, to our Jewish home.
Thank you, Ilan. Leora?
So I want to piggyback something that Ilan was just saying. One of the things that we always stress to our followers, we have, I want to say 15, 16,000 followers on Instagram alone that fall below the 25 and under category. And one thing that I really stress to them specifically is not only are you Jewish, but you should be proud and loud about being Jewish, because now for decades, we're seeing where successfully this BDS, JVP, if not now movement, have successfully split the Jews in two. There's the good Jew, who is in the diaspora, who practices their religion quietly, or they're secular, but they don't speak about Israel. Then there's the bad Jew, like myself, who is not only, whether I practice or not, but I am a supporter of Israel. I'm a proud Zionist. For me, it's, nonsensical. Of course I support a democratic country. Why wouldn't I? So I'm the bad Jew. So we have to take that narrative back. And one thing that we always tell the young people that are following us is that, not only be a proud Jew, be a proud Zionist. So I am a Zionist. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. That's the number one thing, to always be vocal. Now I want to touch about JVP, if not now, BDS. For instance, just because they have Jewish in their name, anyone can say they're Jewish. And we're seeing on Twitter, that's the new technique that the various hate movements are using. As a Jew, Israel is so bad. So for instance, let's look at JVP. I was randomly at like 1 o'clock in the morning scrolling through one of their Facebook feed or their social media feeds, and it just happened to be Facebook. And with the increased transparency requirements that Facebook now has, they have to list where their admins are sitting. So I'm just randomly scrolling, and what do I find? One of their admins is sitting in Lebanon. So why in the world, I said to myself, is Jewish Voices for Peace, and why do they have an admin sitting in Lebanon? Because there is Jewish as an Easter egg. They're not Jewish. It's all a front. So of course, the second we tweeted about it and put it on Instagram and Facebook, they immediately change it. So a lot of these organizations are complete frauds. And if they do have Jewish students, what we're finding is a lot of the Jewish students, unfortunately, are not connected to their Judaism, or they come from extremely, extremely secular homes like I did, and they didn't connect to their Judaism, and they've been fed this false narrative now on college campuses, like Ilan was saying, where they were being screamed at, Israel is bad, Israel is bad, Israel is bad, and they didn't have anyone to turn to tell them, wait a minute, no, this is completely wrong. You just have a bunch of anti-Semitic bigots telling you false information. So two things that if everyone can just walk away from, just because an organization claims that they're Jewish, right now, I'm really not buying that narrative, because I can tell you, along with JVP, there's now again on Twitter that these self-proclaimed rabbis, it's such baloney. And secondly, it's not enough just to say, you know what, I'm Jewish. No, you have to be Jewish loud and proud. And it's okay to say you're a Zionist. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We need to teach the younger generation, our generation even, it's okay to scream. We have to scream at the top of our lungs. We're Zionists. There's nothing wrong with it.
Great message. Thank you. That was great. Ellie?
So when it comes to college campuses, I think I mentioned earlier, our administration is fully aware of Jewish students having unfortunately become almost like punching bags on our campuses. And that's what motivated President Trump to issue the executive order combating anti-Semitism in December, which what the executive order does is for the first time in the history of Jews in America, we have been afforded Title VI protection. So whereas other minorities had been given Title VI protection for some time, Jews had never had Title VI protection until this executive order. I think that I'm so happy to be part of tonight's conversation because it's probably up to people like you all just to make sure that Jewish students now understand that they do have this Title VI protection. And so what the universities have on the line, just so everyone understands, is what President Trump said is federal funding. So just so everyone understands what that means is that should there be indeed Jewish students being targeted and there be Title VI issues on a given campus, that college or that university can lose everything from federal student loan aid to research grants from the federal government. We're talking millions upon millions of dollars at stake here. And so I hope that Jewish students do understand that they now do have this protection from our government.
So Ryan's question was, as our country is fights our way through COVID-19, that we have all seen a big rise in anti-Semitism online, like platforms such as TikTok that so many of our kids are taking part in, and even adults, especially by Americans and teens who have been making fun of the Holocaust of all things. Antisemitism.org, which Executive Director Leora Raz, which we've introduced, has been leading the fight with exposing the individuals who are posting content such as this on a daily basis. So we want to start with Leora and really dive into how she does this on a daily basis. So Leora, if you can start with this question and really walk us through social media content and what you do on a daily basis with tracking these individuals and catching these individuals. We'll start with you and then go to Elon and Ellie and get their perspective on what is going on social media.
So I can kind of break down the audience that we're now seeing on social media. I always say the kind of political junkies and people who like to argue and a little bit more feisty, they're on Twitter. My parents, grandparents' age, they're on Facebook. 30s, 40s, late 20s, we're on Instagram. Where are the kids? I'm talking as young as 7 all the way, early 20s, they're on TikTok. So the day that I woke up and I saw the president announce that TikTok might be banned from the Apple Store and the Google Store, our other platform, was literally, I was amazed and very happy because this platform has become my nemesis. Basically what's happening, it's 2 parallel paths. TikTok is actually a brilliant app. It makes the availability of green screens combined with cutting edge music and technology very simple for, again, kids of 7 to use. So you combine that kind of fun technique and you have anti-Semites very brilliantly taking advantage of it. So how is it happening? On one road, you have anti-Semitism became edgy. And it's cool to make fun of the Holocaust. It's cool to make fun of cheap Jews. It's cool to make fun of Jews with big noses. And we're seeing a phenomenon where even Jewish kids are participating in that. Then you have, on a completely parallel path, something along the lines of going back to what Ellie had said, where in the Middle East, you have anti-Semitism, generations are brought up with it. They know nothing different. They get it from their great-grandparents, it's in their educational system. However, the newer generations that have immigrated to America, it's still in their homes. So what are teenagers, these Arabic teenagers, a lot of Palestinian teenagers, what are we seeing them do? They combine this cutting edge, green screen, fun music, dance techniques, technology with their hatred of Yahuds, of Jews. So we have these two parallel roads happening, and what's in the center of them? It's Jew hatred. And it's not being monitored. Since mid-March, everything is in shutdown mode. So I have a young child at home. She's constantly on her screen. I have to work. We have adult responsibilities. I'm not watching what she's doing. She's at 0.0001 of what's happening in this country. The amount of information they're being bombarded with, we're not able to keep up. So anti-Semitism has very quietly snuck onto TikTok. And again, on these two parallel paths, it's now exploding. So one of the things that we're doing, toddlers, they know you do something wrong, there's going to be a consequence. So we've identified, we have a very dedicated audience on Instagram that submits these anti-Semitic TikToks to us. We feature 1 to 2 a day, and we contact their parents, we contact their schools, and we basically expose what they're doing. The schools have been extremely responsive, and they are most of the time punished. And we've kind of gotten a reputation where if you're going to be anti-Semitic, you're going to get exposed on this one Instagram channel, which is us.
So I'll continue with the answer for the question. Now, it's important for me to mention that SSI operates on all social media platforms at the moment. It's Facebook, where we have over 26,000 followers. That'll be Twitter, where we have about 1,500 followers, or Instagram. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a timeline of how it used to work on college campuses. So when SSI just established in 2012, Facebook was the main platform. Almost every single student back between 2011 to 2015 was always on Facebook. And that's actually what enabled us, or gave us the opportunity in SSI to keep spreading the message farther. This is how students in Indiana University hear about our activity in Minnesota. This is how students in Chicago heard about the activity of SSI as well. And that's how we grew to the coast. The social media really gave us the opportunity to reach students in areas that otherwise we would not be able to get there. And it did help. Over the years, of course, we were not the only players that are operating online and on social media. And there were a lot of anti-Israel organizations. And it's a matter of who can you reach and how many people you can reach with what message do you have, because students nowadays and students supporting Israel, when we work with young students, mainly in the ages between 18 to 22, we need to focus and know what they are interested in, and how we can bring Zionism to that topic and how we can bring the news and updates to that topic. For example, I'll tell you, about 2 weeks ago, I met with a young group of about 24 high schoolers, and I asked those high schoolers, how many of you are nowadays on Facebook? Raise your hand. And 0 high schoolers raised their hand about them being on Facebook. I asked them, how many of you are on Twitter? Approximately 5 or 6 hands went up. And then I asked them, how many of you are on Snapchat or Instagram? And every single one had a hand up. Also when I spoke to the students in Argentina, I told them we're going to start an SSI Facebook page for Argentina chapters. And they said, you know what, Ilan, we don't have Facebook. We're actually operating on Instagram. So now those are the little things that we need to know. And for example, if on Facebook you can write a longer story and give more information, on Twitter you have a character limit and you need to focus on a very short targeted messaging and sound bites. Then on Instagram or on Snapchat or on TikTok, it's more videos. So we need to know which content we're producing in every platform and what kind of message we want to pass. Now, again, anti-Semitism on those platforms is a problem. It's a huge problem. And I'll give you the latest example. Approximately 2-3 weeks ago, SSI, together with over 130 organizations from across North America, South America, Europe, and other places in the world, were signing a petition asking Facebook to adopt the definition of IRA. We wanted Facebook to adopt the definition of IRA, and we launched a whole campaign. And for a whole week, we've been pushing on it until Facebook replied to us. They replied to us that they are right now, of course, in the process of looking and trying to remove things off Facebook that might sound anti-Semitic, but that's still not enough. So we're going to continue that campaign against, specifically, not against, but with Facebook. We're going to continue the campaign until they adopt it, because this is our end goal. But then you have the students, the 18 and 23-year-olds. And we need to make sure that we create good messaging for them that they can take home and they can go and pass it along to another student, another friend. And that is us being Zionist, us loving the state of Israel, and us not staying quiet to anti-Semitic comments or to anti-Zionist comments that are taking place online.
So when it comes to social media, our office to combat anti-Semitism at the State Department is very well aware of the issues of the tremendous amount of hate and anti-Semitism that exists on every social media platform, I would tell you. And so there's a number of issues to tease out here. First of all, when it comes to TikTok, you know, these kids are having fun on these platforms, never mind anti-Semitism. What they're not understanding, these innocent children who are on it, is that it's owned by it's linked at minimum to the Chinese Communist Party. And so what's happening is that the CCP has access to these children's information, to their likes and dislikes, and to their thinking in essence. So I think it behooves every parent to understand not only are kids getting exposure to anti-Semitism on TikTok, but they are also having their information shared with the CCP. And so parents should really think hard about whether they want to give kids this access. And that's why the president has indeed called for TikTok to come under American hands, or possibly just get banned in this country. In terms of other social media platforms, I recently took to the airwaves myself in calling out Twitter's hypocrisy, because Twitter has allowed time and time again the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, to call for genocide on Twitter against the Jewish people. So recently, you know, he has called Israel a cancer. He calls for the elimination of the state of Israel on Twitter. He is someone who goes the rhetoric of the Nazis in calling for a final solution. And this man has been given free rein on Twitter, while at the same time, Twitter has been doing things like flagging the tweets of President Trump. So I would say one of the issues that we face in dealing with social media companies is that while there is a tremendous amount of hatred and anti-Semitism on these platforms, let's make sure, though, that we're holding them accountable for actually countering the hate on their platforms and not silencing conservative voices, which is sadly something that we're seeing happening in the United States.
Great. Thank you so much. Those are the questions that we had. I do want to open it up for a few chat questions that we have. We have a lot. We're definitely not going to get to all of them. Sorry, everybody. There are a lot in here. We will take a few. So the first question that we have is from Romy. So the first question that we're going to ask is, how should students advocate for Israel when canceled culture exists? And are there specific social media techniques that we can use?
I can tune in on this one because Romy is actually a student of Students Supporting Israel. Romy represents SSI at Columbia University, one of our strongest chapters across the country. So Romy, we're very proud of her activism and the team that operates in the Columbia grounds. They're doing a fantastic job, and we even brought our national conference there this past December. Now, to Romy, cancel culture exists on college campuses as well. You know, and it's hard because, for example, if you say that you're a Zionist, some students might not even want to speak to you, you know, and some organizations, even like Students for Justice in Palestine, they have such a thing called anti-normalization policy, in which if you're Zionist, if you're supporting of Israel, we are not even approaching you in conversation. Now, the question is, who are we trying to persuade? You know, are we trying to persuade the students who are not knowing anything about Israel? Are we trying to counter the people that combat us on campus on a daily basis? It's who are our specific target audience. So if it's the people that don't want to speak to us and don't want to even hear from a Zionist, we're not going to spend 100% of our time right now trying to convince them to why we should have a conversation and why Israel is a good thing. You know, we are trying to approach the people that are in between, on the fence, or not on the fence at all. They're just not aware of the issue. So this is something that we try to do. And again, most important is to understand that cancel culture might exist, but if our students know what Zionism is, what is the definition of Zionism and what Zionism represents, if they know their heritage, their roots, and where they're coming from, they're going to be able to face anything on our college campuses. You know, as long as we're proud in ourselves and we know what we're talking about, no one's going to be able to shake us. And it's important that the members of SSI and other pro-Israel students are stand firm on college campuses, no matter which audience they're facing.
I can add on to that. So cancel culture, which is huge in 2020, seems to apply to everyone except Jews and anti-Semitism. If you remotely say anything bad about insert race here, religion, you are going to have a problem with your school, organization you're involved with. That pretty much is clear. If you put Jews into that space, you get a pass. You are allowed an apology and you get a pass. So one thing that we really try to do is expose anti-Semitism, expose and help educate our audience, especially, I keep speaking to the younger demographic that follows us, is that no, Jews deserve equal treatment, just like African Americans, Asians, and insert other minorities here. We are not subpar. And if you look statistically, whether it's domestic in America or internationally, we truly are a minority. So unfortunately, we're never treated as such. And so that's one thing that we always try to convey, is that you need to include Jews in the standards that you're holding other people to, and that cancel culture really is not exclusive of the Jewish people.
Great. Thank you so much. The next question that we had from one of the members is, can you guys comment on the recent fire at the University of Delaware Chabad House? But I do want to add that as I was going to mention that question, we have another comment in the chat that I'll add on to this question from Isabella, who is a student at the University of Delaware. And she writes that I'm terrified about feeling safe there regarding what just happened with the Chabad fire. What steps could the University of Delaware take to make us feel safer and ensure that no hate crimes occur again?
Sure, I'm happy to comment on that. You know, the United States has very strong hate crimes legislation. The issue, I think, at the moment is that it has been deemed an arson. I don't think they have found the perpetrators. So until we find the perpetrators, we can't bring anyone to justice. I would say to this student and to all students at that campus that they need to get their voices heard. They should be approaching the administration of their college, the college president, and also I hope to Jewish alumni. And one thing that I would be very weary of is to make sure that we don't allow anti-Semitism to become politicized. So we're seeing this happen often, where people are politicizing Jew hatred, and it doesn't advance the cause, and it doesn't provide protection for Jews. So, you know, Joe Biden, I think, tweeted something on it, and I don't think he's helping the cause by doing that. So again, I would really very much encourage the student and all students on that campus to get in touch with the university officials and really, you know, express their fears and their desire for greater security.
How do we address anti-Semitism that is coming from pro-BDS teachers on college campuses?
And I'll give you an example. I'll give you a specific example. We had a student in SSI about a year ago, and he told me, he texted me, I got a text message in the middle of the week, and he said, I'm proud right now in myself and what I did. And I asked him, like, Isaac, well, what are you so proud in? Like, what have you done? And he said, you know, our students in the classroom just went on a whole rant on Israel, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I spoke up and I told him this is not the case. I'm the president of Students Supporting Israel on our campus. This is not happening like the way you prescribe it. I invite the students here to come to our event. And for myself, I was like, this is what we're looking for. That's the type of students we're looking for. And we need to realize that a lot of professors use their classroom as a way to teach and almost brainwash people about how bad Israel is. A lot of times it comes in the political science department. It's not necessarily going to be in the business school, but in the poli-sci departments and other departments like that in the universities, we see how teachers use their platform in order to speak against Israel. And a lot of times they host panels in support of BDS, and they do a lot of things in order to persuade as many students against Israel. And this is again where it comes to the students. First of all, by the way, how we can deal with it nowadays, we can submit a complaint to the school, and if the school not doing anything, we have the Title VI that the president signed, and the students can submit a whole case to the Department of Justice. Then the school can be investigated. I was there in the White House for the signing of the executive order, and that was a big moment that will be protecting pro-Israel and Jewish students on college campuses. Second of all, again, it comes down to speaking up. Sometimes students might be a little bit afraid because, you know, the professor might hurt my grade. You know, I'm going to be quiet because I don't want to get my grade hurt. The students might say that I'm not going to speak up because I feel like it's not the right moment. But what we teach our students is to encourage them to speak up, and it doesn't matter who stands in front of you. Because again, if anyone in the classroom will hear that there is another opinion, and someone that is firmly and strongly disagrees with the professor, it's already going to be a different ball game for us and for our students. And when it comes down to supporting Israel in the classroom, again, it's not always easy, but we need to do it. And if you have kids, if you have grandchildren, if you have anyone that goes to colleges today, I ask you, please tell them to speak up, even when it comes down to the classroom in front of their professor. It's important, and a lot of difference can happen.
Karen, I just want to jump in for one moment here, if I may, because I saw that one of the questions on the chat was, you know, what exactly is Title VI protection? So I just want to read.
That's what I was going to ask you,
yeah, sure. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. While Title VI does not cover discrimination based on religion, individuals who face discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin do not lose protection under Title VI. So, so that's the basic understanding of Title VI. And again, you know, I do encourage everyone to spread the word that Jewish students do have Title VI protection now.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know we said this would go till 8, so I wanted to end on this note. I see that a couple of people asked what IHRA, the working definition of that, and I see that Trisha was kind enough to drop it in the chat. And I know that we can find more information about Title VI as well online. So I know that we can get all this information online. A lot of people put information in the chat as other people were asking, so thank you so much for that. I myself, representing the BZD, of course, really want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I especially want to thank Ellie, Leora, and Elon for really taking the time out to be here on a Sunday night and providing us with really great information, which is much needed. At the BZD, we really thrive to bring people the information that they need. We have an anti-Semitism group, a local anti-Semitism group, Baltimore Against Anti-Semitism. On Facebook, we send out a weekly email, which provides a lot of information, not only with regard to anti-Semitism, but it does include things with regard to anti-Semitism and others. We will send out an email after this event, which will have everybody's information with Stop Anti-Semitism links to their events, SSI links to their Facebook pages, SSI links to their Facebook pages, Hashevet with Brian Leibs, which he will talk in a minute. So you all will have information to connect with these groups as well. But I do want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who can hopefully thank everybody for being here tonight as well. But here, Brian, let me turn it over to you to see if you can just say a quick thank you to everybody.
So thank you to all the speakers for joining today. Thank you to everyone that dialed in to hear from our speakers. And Hashevet is a new organization that I and 8 other young Jewish professionals recently founded to help be a watchdog of Jewish organizations to ensure that they are adhering to strong Jewish values, promoting Zionism, fighting anti-Semitism, regardless of where it comes from politically, and really just standing up for the future of our people. Feel free to learn more about Hashevet on our Twitter account, Facebook account, Instagram account. Our website should be up and running next week. But Karen, it was a real honor on behalf of me and my board, a real honor to co-host this event with you and BZD. And the tremendous work that you've been doing for years now certainly has not gone unnoticed. And thank you again for letting us to be a partner with you for this.
Thank you. And it was recorded for everybody asking in the chat. We will have it edited and it will be sent out in our e-blast in the next week or two as soon as we get it done. So thank you again. Have a great Sunday.